All right,
Yes,
Rachel,
not
if you, yeah, if you would add to that coherency W and the Costas array and Golem ruler discussion with NIST 2 weeks ago.
You know, the reason I heard of a Golem ruler is they actually used a Golem ruler for one of the super darn pulse modes. And that was one of the first papers I read in grad school. So that's where I learned about Golem rulers for the first
Yeah,
time.
well, you might want to add then the related method of the Barker codes.
Mm.
I have to tell you that discussion was way over my head 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I apologize. I certainly didn't intend that.
No, it piqued my interest. I mean, you and Jeff were going back and forth, and I was like, I need to learn some of this.
Do you want me to add you to the Google Drive where I've been collecting a bibliography?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, I'll do that right now.
That'd be great.
Yeah, very fast in old business. John is not here again this week. I assume that's because the W8EDU station now has Windows and is therefore shaping up to be a real functioning station again. In terms of old business, though, I would like Kung's comment before we get too much more into discussion. I know today would be a light week, so I kind of let us chat for a bit, but on if there's any update on the Grape 2 data.
There's no significant update. I'm still working on the same task surrounding the PCRF. Then besides that, I sent an email to you, Rachel, regarding the HU abstract. So we can meet tomorrow, or today, to talk about that more and finalize it.
This is in progress. An update from me. This is in progress and has a dedicated overleaf now. Dr. Verzel, I can send you the link if you'd like.
For the paper?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And
the nice thing about overleaf is everything is included. The bad thing about overleaf is there is now a button that says submit to AGU journal at the top, which makes me very anxious.
Well, I've never actually used that button. So.
But the little the manuscript feature says at the top, manuscript submitted to geophysical research letter. So when I caught that tiny gray script, it gave me like a heart attack. I was like, did I somehow accidentally hit this button?
Oh my God.
It says it on one.
Don't worry, you're fine.
That's I think all the old business we need to cover. So back to other stuff. Sorry to cut anybody off.
I was just going to update that we've got the Whisper Sonde at WWV installed and operating.
That's wonderful.
It's on 5 frequencies right now. Having a little trouble with the tuning of the antenna on 80 meters. And we're going to work on that. So
that's a transmitting. It's transmitting, right, Dave?
So I'm transmitting, and it's on. We're transmitting on 40, 30, 20, 15, and 10.
And it is the top beacon in the world right now in terms of the number of reports of its signal.
And it hasn't even been on for 24 hours yet.
Yes, yeah. Wow, you must be below the golden ionosphere or something. No, it's just that in part it's because it does transmit. I don't know how you I didn't look. Dave, did you leave it set up to transmit on every cycle on all of the?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Maybe we're overdoing it, but it's
no. It's in my opinion. Okay, my opinion is that for radio science purposes, it's best to be transmitting as much as you can, as often as you can, on as many bands as possible, because each one of them is a measurement of the ionosphere propagation. Each one of those reports. So the more you have, and you don't, the bands there's plenty of space on the spectrum for the signal. They don't, you're not masking other people by transmitting. So that's my opinion, and I think that for our purposes, just like WWV is on constantly, this W0 WWV ought to be on constantly. So
Yeah, the call sign is Whiskey Whiskey Zero Whiskey Whiskey Victor. So it's the
yeah,
call sign.
this is yeah, if you look at here's yeah, that's here's here's a more complete map of its let's see, where's there it is. This is oh geez. I didn't lose you. Okay. This is the BK7JJ site, which is the one I use for Whisper, viewing
Whisper
Whisper. So,
Rocks.
Whisper Rocks, yeah. It's a so I mean see if we do this, let's do another just this is the last hour on if I move this slider, we'll get colors. This is the last hour. You have 4,814 reception reports from your transmitter right down here in the lower left-hand corner. You can see a list on a per band basis. So this is just the last hour.
Hey, we made it to Antarctica. That's great.
There's 40 meters. There's 30 meters in the last hour. Here's 20 meters. Here's 15. Isn't that so you can see 20 is closed to Europe, 15 is open, and here's 10. And it looks 10 is I'm kind of surprised, but you got it down to DP0, the
Yeah.
German station hears you. So that's the interesting thing here is VK7 has a top beacons page. So here's the top beacons in the last 24 hours, but I'm just looking at the ones in North America. So now these are being right here. This is being sorted by the number of different stations that reported the station, and you're hardly in the top there. But if you sort by the number of raw stations, you got almost 130,000 reports of your transmission
In less than 24 hours.
in less than 24 hours. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I think the antenna is working.
yes, it's working. It's working very well. And
You guys would like where it's placed. I can show a quick photo and then I can be done with this discussion.
yeah, stop share. Anyway, that's I think we would want to move you to, or at least add 4W transmissions so that we could get the Doppler shift data. We can't get Doppler shift from yet from Whisper 2. At least we can't get it reliably. So it's
Right.
It's
I don't know if you can see that, that's the installation of the Whisper Sound. They had an extra abandoned box that we decided to put it in. It mounted very nicely. And very short runs. I've only got 3-meter runs on these GPS pucks. And so very conveniently, there's an opening to the outside of the building and we're able to run and get those placed in that spot.
You only need one puck. There's a loop through feature in the
Yeah, I wasn't so sure about that. Reading
Yeah.
there was a 6 dB drop on that splitter.
Yes,
and
yeah,
so
there would be. Yeah.
that was the concern that I had. And
Yeah.
the signal to the Leo Bodner is good. It took a little while to get it to get the clock inside the radio.
Is this
Yeah.
actually on the property of WWV?
So this is in the WWVB building, and the transmitter is sitting right next to, Jim's got his hand on the dummy load for the WWVB transmitters. So that's a
Wow.
50,000 watt dummy load that we're transmitting. We're transmitting right next to the transmitters.
This is a really big deal.
It is. They let us go in there. They helped. I had the whole crew help get this thing installed.
I mean, this
We
is
hung
a
the
really
antenna.
huge deal.
The antenna is hanging off of, so there's my antenna, and we don't have enough vertical height on this. I'm going to go out and put a pole in next to these telephone poles. That telephone pole used to carry the balanced line in the air over to WWV South, and then the second pole there went to the north. And currently, you can see that tray coming out. That's the coax going to the WWVB transmitters. And so the antenna goes up this pole and runs 130 feet over to this other pole. This is also was used to carry the balance line in the old days.
Wow.
So it's holding our antenna up. And I put a polyphaser in line, so we got a grounding point and also a little protection going into the building just in case. And so our cabinet is this cabinet back here, the middle cabinet. This is the dummy load. This is the matrix it's known as, and this is the switching for all of the antennas and the transmitters. The transmitters are right to the left of all of this. So we have a 1 watt transmitter doing whisper beacons next to 50,000 watt, two 50,000 watt transmitters on LF. So it's a very
That's
interesting.
that's really cool.
That is very impressive, David. It really, really is. The fact that we're working hand in glove with them so closely. The relationship you've nurtured in the past 5 years is really paying off.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
Gary.
So, what's
Gary,
the antenna you're using, Dave?
It's a my antenna. It's the it's the unfed half wave low power 80 meter antenna.
80 meters. Okay.
But 80 meters is given some feedback to the transmitter, so there's a current override that shuts it off. And I think we need to get the vertical rise of the antenna on that pole. It needs to go up a little bit higher. I think it's a little short.
Have you got a feed line choke in the system?
There is. There's a little bit above it. There's a choke in it. So
Okay, because we had to
It's-
do that with all of our end bed antennas here.
right.
Yeah.
But it's working great on 40 through 10. So, and we've got a good start. The crew there's really they're interested. They like the fact that we're doing this, and I think we do have a good relationship with NIST. So I hope it continues.
Now you just have to get the other WWVB antenna up.
It's gonna be a little trickier, I think, in Hawaii because they don't really have anything to, it's just flat beach, and so it would have to be some kind of a multi-band vertical antenna at WWVH. But they're receptive to that. That's the next step. So,
Yeah, I said VB.
oh, what?
Fix your
I'm sorry,
antenna.
I misunderstood.
Right. So we are still sinking here in New England.
Oh, getting the south array up. Yeah, they
Right.
just put that out to bid to get the people to climb the towers. They're not allowed to climb the towers anymore. The crew isn't. And
Yeah.
that has set them back about 5 months. And nobody at the station is very happy about that, but that's just the way it is, government
Yeah,
contracts.
I'm running into the same here at Dartmouth.
Yeah.
They won't let us do any work. I got to get 2 people up on the roof to put up railings so that I can move 2 antennas that are hand carryable.
Correct.
Right.
Well, we climbed a ladder. We probably shouldn't have done that yesterday, but it worked. great. So that's my quick update. I can't stick around.
Is that the vertical part, the riser of that antenna appears to be next to, very near to a metal walled building. I wonder if that might impair the radio. We can look at it, but I wonder if that might impair propagation on the higher bands where the vertical part of the antenna is the major source of radiation, the field. Right. What's the orientation of that building?
So that the building, you can look it up on Google Docs, or
Yeah.
on Google Earth, and
Yeah.
it's basically oriented northwest to southeast. So the antenna runs parallel to the building. There's really no good way to get the antenna
Farther
up in
away.
the air farther away from the building.
Yeah.
So
Well, hey,
it's
it
a
should
good
be-
start. I think we'll tune it, and we'll figure out the tweaks that need to be made to get 80 up. So
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I've noted is that in that top beacons that while you're getting lots of reception reports, there's other transmitters that are higher power, which is high power by whisper standards. There's a 10-watt whisper transmitter in Illinois, and they get many more uniques. Many more people hear it. They don't get that many responses. But I think that for ionospheric research purposes, it might be worth considering in the whisper world going to higher power by our standards, 10 watts or even 100 watts, because I think there might produce reception reports on many more propagation paths and perhaps ones that aren't currently being observed by the WHISPER world. Gwen G3ZIL has done a report on the WWE signals to Nathaniel, and there are appear to be propagation paths that are 30, 40, 50 dB down from the main carrier. And we're not going to get those with 1 watt WHISPER. The main carrier will be plus 30. You don't hear things that are, well, you rarely get plus 30 dB SNR. So maybe you get a 20 dB SNR. So, the range of what you can hear is 50 dB, the other paths. So anyway, that's a future direction, is high power WHISPER. Probably wouldn't want to do it in the WHISPER band. People wouldn't be happy. So we might have to. Anyway, this is really great. Thank you for doing this, Dave. It's very, very rewarding. I know that
Yeah.
Paul is very excited by it, and I was glad to see my antenna that I bought for the Eclipse is now has a long-term life of its useful life. It was sitting in my garage here doing nothing. So it's
Yeah.
Wait, this seems like a really kind of big achievement. Do you think this, Dave, W0DS, would you like to see this written up as like a news article on hamsci.org and sent out to like ARRL News and things like that?
Sure, I think so. I think we could put together a short story about it. So it's a good idea.
Gary, do you and Ed want to work with Dave on that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great opportunity.
Yeah. So yeah, you can work with Gary and Ed, so you can figure out who wants to actually do the writing. But then Gary can help you actually get it onto the front of hamsci.org, and Gary and Ed can help get the press release out to like ARRL.org and maybe even probably even the NASA citizen science, I think, would also be really good.
Yeah, government to government, I think that'd be a good match.
Yeah. And I also, I think this is wonderful, and I think this and Rob and Paul's work really trying to get these stations out to more far-flung places is really promising. I think I think there may also be, well, we'll see about that. The other thing I wanted to highlight, I don't know that was mentioned, but I saw it in one of Rob's email. Rob, I want to thank you and Gwyn for filing a response to the FCC's request for comments on the May 20th storm as well. Because
it was all Gwen. He put my name on it, but I can, I want him to be. He's really the author. Right? He felt that it would be, I might have more credibility from a U.S. ham than from,
Well, I guess I'll send Gwyn an email too, thanking him. But
yeah.
I know we just, like, I personally, and I think some of the other people on the team here just didn't have the bandwidth to get something pulled together in time. So it was really nice to see that report.
That was the one that had the different propagation paths in it, I think he mentioned in there. There's a whole set of Grafana pages that are in that mentioned in that paper. So if you want to go look at the data yourself, not only for the that event, but for any station, anytime, there's a set of Grafana pages mentioned there that you can log into and do make queries and take a look at signal levels and background noise levels, and look across the whole WHISPER database. The Grafana pages that he mentions are hardly limited to the stations that he mentioned. So.
And these are public comments too, so like I can show this report here.
Oh, of course, yeah. I sent it out to yeah. I was
yeah, so this is what Gwyn Griffiths wrote up.
Yeah. So if you look down a little bit they're right there. You see the data, oops, you just passed it. If you go back up, you see the number 9. There's that's a link with a login and password that gives you access to a set of Grafana pages. And those are, there's that login and password. Anybody is welcome to use that. He created he created those specially. They're part of a much larger set of pages that Gwen has created. That allows you to look into the database and learn about whisper spots. And anyway,
Is this also something we can share on the Hamsci front page?
yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think Quinn would find it very rewarding. He's been made some presentations, not to this group, but to other groups that have been disappointing to him, the lack of response. So the more you could publicize this, I think the more Gwen would feel that his, I mean, there's considerable effort he
Yeah.
put into this. And the more you could publicize it, I'm sure the more he would feel rewarded. You can see the gaps there during the storm.
So I'm glad to reach out to Gwen, so to make sure I'm asking for the right thing. This is his comments to the FCC request on the May, what was the 20th geomagnetic storm, right?
Yes, yeah.
What
Okay.
I'll do, Barry, I have it right here. I will forward it to you and to Gwen and CC Rob, and I will basically kind of make an introduction and then ask if we can, include it, put it on the front page of Hamsci.
Perfect.
Great. I'll do that right now.
And then without
Rachel back to net.
Yeah, and without further ado, 88Y, did you want to talk about CCW?
Yeah, let me take about 5 minutes here. Let's see, starter, our Eclipse CHU monitoring project. The 2 terabytes of data are collected and the students are working on presentations and papers. I submitted a small manuscript to the Canadian Amateur, their equivalent of QST. I felt they deserved first publication of some data because we used CHU and because the Radio Amateurs of Canada provided quite a lot of help, including the control point station in Ottawa. The WWV-WWVH Scientific Signal Committee met a couple of weeks ago. We hadn't talked for a couple of meetings about anything really substantial to the project. We kind of exchanged niceties and talked about related issues, but I feel that it's time for that work to continue. For a couple of years now, WWV has been running on the 8th minute after each hour, and WWVH on the 38th minute, a collected series of signals that are the first nibble at well-designed signals for distance sounding, but really were more intended to characterize the transmitters than to be specifically useful. One of the aspects that makes them less useful than they might be is that neither we nor they went to any effort to get the signals phase coherent with the carrier. We just supplied an audio signal, and the engineers at WWV and WWVH put those on the 38th minute after each hour. So they're nice and they look pretty on a spectrum display and they sound interesting, but they're not really providing much data anymore. We've characterized the transmitters, and in fact, WWVH will be changing out its transmitters in the next couple of years. So the next steps are interesting. The CHU work during the eclipse used CHU's second tick as a radar signal, but we didn't follow the carrier the way that Grape does. We used the second tick for a variety of reasons, measured time of flight and amplitude instead of Doppler shift and amplitude. Certainly time of flight and Doppler shift are tightly related through integral derivative relationship, but it's a different measurement. I think there's an argument to be made that it's the better measurement. And furthering that, the added signal to WWV, WWVH, and perhaps a network of amateur beacons might be essentially a pulse radar signal, but there are ways of optimizing it. Using the second ticks as radar signals of opportunity is certainly a whole lot better than nothing, but the autocorrelation integrals are very broad. So finding the maximum likelihood estimation of time of flight with minimal variance in noise is difficult. There are a series of demonstrated optimized keyings. They come under the rubric of Barker codes and Golomb rulers. There are a couple of them that are appropriate for this, and we are furthering the idea of adding that. The two-dimensional version of it, so that represents time. You're keying a transmitter on and off, or perhaps changing its phase 180 degrees. So turning it on and off, you're providing a signal that is 1 or 0. Providing a 180-degree phase shift, you're providing a signal that is 1 or -1. And there are various reasons to do either. FT8 and FT4 use the two-dimensional variant of this. They use a precisely timed code that is optimized for the autocorrelation integral minimum variance, the same way that the Barker code and the Golomb rulers are. But they add a second dimension of Doppler shift. And I have begun a discussion at Case and have started recruiting students, primarily undergraduates, to take on a year-long project that I hope will end in a HAMSci presentation where we will get good criticism in a friendly setting, and then a presentation to NIST next summer with a proposal for adding a signal to WWV. The Costas ruler is something worth knowing about and understanding well. Maybe it's the educational value of FT8 in the sense of signal processing. I like FT8. I'm not going to argue that it's a bad thing for ham radio or that there aren't many other interesting educational issues. But the math part of it, I think, is learning the Costas array. I started a library on the topic. Nathaniel is on that library mailing list. Anyone else who wants to be, let me know. And I'm also working with George Herron, N2APB in Tennessee. He's the principal behind Midnight Design, which is kind of like QRP Labs. It's another good modern QRP kitting company with wide following. He has wanted to do coherent CW for a while, and he's working with me on this issue of using coherent CW in an amateur beacon network for time of flight and propagation studies. That's my spiel. Rachel?
That sounds very interesting. And I'm going to make sure I'm on the list.
Good. If this crowd would like a presentation on the signal processing of Costas arrays and the others, let me know and I'll prepare it for one of these meetings.
David, you said
QRP.
David, you said you created a library of like presentations and things.
I did, and Nathaniel, I just added you to it. You should have an email in your Gmail account.
Okay, I have like 5,000 unread emails, which is like
okay.
crazy.
But how do you want me to do it differently? You're there.
So what I was going to suggest is, would you like a page on hamsci.org where you can kind of post things for this project? Do you want
yes,
like a project page?
That. Yes.
Okay. And so I think either if you can coordinate, do you know how to get around the HamSci page and add things, or do you want help with that?
It's been a few years. I will likely need help, but I'll try myself first.
Well, I don't, just to keep everything coordinated, would you be willing to work with Gary to create a good page and help you get that set up?
If Gary is willing to work with me.
Well, I've heard you don't bite, so I think we're fine.
Yeah, because what you can do is there's like we do have a HamSci like projects page where we kind of have like the high level projects, so you can get like an entry under there, and then from there you can have kind of your own page where you can structure it the way you want to. And
Good, Gary, if you want to do that, let's meet. And for the rest of you, even if you don't have an interest in starting in on this, spending an hour studying Costas arrays is well worth it. It's one of those math topics you spend about 2 minutes reading it the first time and you think this doesn't make any sense. You spend another 2 minutes, you say this doesn't make any sense. You spend another 2 minutes, say, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and this completely explains how FT8 works so well. I'm really glad that I suddenly know this. So Costas arrays, at least take a look at the Wikipedia page.
You know, I've been in discussion with Phil Karn about this time of flight measurement addition to the to our suite of things, and Phil is interested in implementing this and studying this process. And Paul is interested in building a transmitter that would implement it because it's almost certain that these signals, this modulated signal, would not be purely frequency modulated. Optimally, it would have both frequency and amplitude components. So Phil, I'd like to, you know, I've been trying to encourage Phil to get involved, because if there's anyone who could implement a time of flight modulation scheme, it would seem that he would be the person. And Paul is ready to build the hardware to do it. And we now have a WWV transmitter that could be upgraded or replaced with one that does sends out such a signal. So we wouldn't need to necessarily add this signal to the WWV carrier itself. It might be possible to transmit this from the antenna system that we've just that Dave has just installed.
Good enough. One of the charms of using the Costas arrays is that they fit inside of one WWV second, and there are a number of blanks available. So we might be able even to have one sent every minute. One more discussion was using the IRIG code, the underlying automatic time setting code on all 3 stations, as a similar autocorrelation signal of opportunity. We've been working on this one for a couple of years, and actually Phil Erickson set this into motion maybe 2018. So it's another interesting possibility.
Yeah, the Phil's observation, he's been looking at the WWB carriers carefully, is that there's a lot of phase distortion on the 10 megahertz and I think the 5 megahertz carriers, that apparently they're plate modulated, and they have and they're nonlinear when they're in their modulation technique. So I'm not, you know, there might be some challenges in getting such a signal with which would require phase accuracy. It might be a challenge on the current transmitters.
Yeah,
he's the one who knows. He's the one who knows all these details. I don't.
Well, yes, and he's been meeting with us. That's again, much of the issue of the current modulation signal that's on the 8th minute after each hour. We've done that characterization. It's part of the reason that we'd like to consider modulating signals instead of something different, examining the carrier.
Yeah. Well, as an alternative, you know, that we've tried to reach out. There is a Professor Heisel at Cornell has obtained a Part 5 license for a modulation technique that is meant in the FCC filing and issue, discusses measuring time of flight. And they've been using the HARP, or proposing, at least described that they would be using the HARP station up in Atlanta as the transmitting station for this modulation technique. And I don't know if his work would be useful or relevant to this, but it appears like he's been doing, work on implementing time of flight measurements on shortwave transmissions. And we have, I think, Nathaniel, you know this Professor Heisel at Cornell,
Yes.
Maybe others do. Paul Elliott sent an email to him, but since it's a kind of code call email to ask what we could learn about it, it's not there was one press release about this modulation technique, and nothing, no details. So I don't know if he will recognize, he may be in your situation, Nathaniel, with 5,000 unread emails. So I'm wondering if perhaps I'll forward to you, and I was thinking maybe even Phil or someone who knows him, an email from you reinforcing Paul's email might gain his attention, and we might learn if there's anything useful that he's developed for that
Yeah, I
along
will.
those lines.
I'll be very happy to, yeah, send that over to me. I'll be very happy to try to get his attention. And
Good.
if I can't, you know, like he certainly knows who I am, and we've chatted at meetings. So he does know who I am and what I'm doing. And if I can get his attention, I think if Phil sends an email, that might help too.
Okay,
So,
I'll do that. I'll do that soon.
escalate it up.
Okay.
Great.
And Joe, you were doubling with Nathaniel a while back. Did you still have a comment?
I just sent a chat to David.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, or concerns? All right. I think we're done here.
Thank you. That sounds
7-3.
great.
And where can we find a recording of that presentation that David made about Costas arrays? I was driving and missed a lot of it, but it's is it recorded and available?
It was on this telecon, right? From what day?
It was on the WWV Scientific Signal Group meeting about 2 weeks ago. It was recorded, but I don't know how to get at it. Christina will know. Maybe Rachel does.
I'm looking.
Rob, I can include you on the Google Drive. At least the PowerPoint is there, if not my golden voice. What email would you prefer?
Rob@robinet.us is the best one. ROBINETT. You can see my name in the corner there.
Yes. At what domain?
Robinet.us, United
Yes,
States.
good.
That was
And Gary, I don't know if you saw in the chat, I agree with you. We should make sure all of the relevant agencies that would be involved with the WWV beacon should be comfortable with this before we make a big deal about it.
Right. It's the old ask permission or beg forgiveness debate. So we don't want to get into that.
No, this is definitely an ask permission thing. We want good feelings here.
Yeah, this one's too high stakes. Rob, take a look. Make sure you got that email.
okay. Thank you. I'm aware of Costas arrays, but I like you. I think at this point I'm like you. Before you studied them, I understand vaguely the principles, but not
It's very cute. You'll like this one.
Good. Well, thank you for working on that. I think it's great interest. So you're in conversation with is Phil? I'm talking about Phil Karn now, about not Phil Mendelson, about the time of flight modulation techniques.
He didn't attend that Zoom meeting, but he has attended others. And
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
but
Good.
certainly let him know if you talk to him. Thank you.
Yeah, I will. Well, I've been trying to, if I know nothing about implementing this, but he certainly of my circle, Phil Karn is the person best with the skills appropriate to design and implement such a modulation technique. And we've been discussing it. I keep kind of poking at him to not work on new features for K9Q radio, get to work on something that really is a new frontier for radio, amateur radio science, which would be this time of flight measurements. So that's so anybody else who wants to poke at Phil Karn to work on it, I think he's the best candidate among all of us. He has the skills and the interest, I think, in implementing it. And Paul Elliott, who makes the Whisper Sound, is ready to build it, transmitter for it. And the receivers we have are all already capable of receiving such signals. I mean, we can make, the only thing we can't do, actually, which is I think part of the Tangerine project, is timestamp with sample level accuracy the receive times. We don't have the current receivers don't timestamp the receive stream can't obtain that time accurately. But I think from Monday night's discussion, I think we've come up with a technique that should work pretty well that'll allow PIL to enhance K9Q radio to associate sample times with the demodulated signal times. And so I think that problem, I think we have a solution for that problem that would that he's ready to implement. But we need a new receiver. We need to actually start building these successors to the 888 so we can do the time of flight, because I don't think we have a receiver that would be suitable for that that technique as I understand it.
A couple
Anyway.
of years ago, Steve Serwin and I ran some crude tests on time of flight, and they turned out fairly well. Basically, we just put a pulse out at medium-high power, and Steve timed it, and the resulting distance was reasonably accurate.
Phil believes within using a 3 kilohertz bandwidth signal, which is what we now are allowed to do, with an appropriate modulation technique, that one should be able to resolve time of flight to within hundreds of meters for a 2-minute long packet. So because you have if you have enough signal transitions and a long enough measurement period, the 2-minute measurement period, you can kind of calculate out what you could hope to achieve in terms of time of flight resolution. Given that
it's kind of a scaling problem. 2 minutes is a long time. One of the things I've noticed in my CHU second tick monitoring is how much propagation changes second by second. So there are various reasons for doing it over different time scales. The long ones have higher resolution, the short ones catch details. The second by second Costas array has that possibility. There are others that it doesn't have, certainly.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a trade-off between the duration of the measurement time and the resolution of the time of flight distance resolution. And you're right. I mean, it'd be good to come up with a technique that allows us to zoom in the way we can with FFTs, right? In essence, if you take a longer for a given sample rate, if you get a longer period of a sample, duration of sample, you can get higher frequency resolution. In the same way, the longer samples of a time of flight signal might give you greater distance resolution, and you could trade it off. I don't know. It would be ideal if the receiver could decide what period of time it wanted to look at I haven't seen, I can't say we've ever looked in detail, second to second. A lot of signals, carrier signals, a lot of, we believe that a lot of these variations are due to multipath, the XO paths interfering with each other, and that if we had a receive antenna that supported orthogonal, reception, that one could reduce dramatically that kind of the interference nulls that occur on a receive site that has only one polarization, reception polarization. So that's another area that we're working on. Glenn N6GN has created a antenna system that supports that. I mean, there are many others, of course, that do it, but one of the needs is to have a phase synchronized, dual or multi-channel receiver. Again, something we can't yet do with the RX888, or unlikely to do with the 888. And one more reason why we need to get what do we call it? Clementine SDR project? I don't know what you're calling it, Nathaniel, but I think that there's a lot of reasons to try to accelerate that project, because it would allow us to do these kinds of measurements that David's describing. I think that's a great interest to me, and I think to the Whisper Demon group is very interested in now that we have frequency resolution down to the millihertz or better at our receive sites, but we have no measurements of polarization or absolute time, and that's where we want to go next.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think we're roughly calling it the Clementine. And as you know, the Monday night group is trying to sketch out different there is a target design requirement document that has been made up, and they are working on coming up with some ideas of actual circuit designs or at the block level at this point, and solutions to meet that requirements document.
I have, again, Paul Elliott has done such a marvelous job on the transmitter and implementing it. If there were such a design, Paul hasn't volunteered, but I bet you he could be induced into, doing all of the kind of printed circuit board, getting a JLPCP to build it, and such. So he's been I think for me a wonderful resource for actually creating hardware that that's useful for our projects. He completely responsible for the whisper sound. I mean, I suggested the idea, but he completely took it on, and I think he might be able to do that. You might be able to induce him to do that for the receiver if we came up with a design. I don't think he wants to do the actual design, but if once it existed, he might be a resource that we could that would be available to get it implemented, prototyped and such.
I completely agree. So I'd be very interested in working with him and our tapper. So
Yeah.
I'm very interested, and
Yeah.
I've been very big fan of Paul's work there. So
well, I had needed so many of his adapters that it just wasn't practical for me to. It was going to be incredibly expensive to ask George to build them. So on Friday, I asked Paul if he could order up from JLPCB a bunch of the PC boards.
That's great.
These are the adapters. And on Tuesday, they arrived from China. I'm just flabbergasted. And
the other thing we need to do is, and again, I think work with Gary on this. We need to have a web page on hamsci.org and or Whisper Demon or both that basically says, if you want to set one of these things up, here are the directions. And I think we need to get that documented.
We absolutely. In fact, our thought is in part is maybe we should actually have through Pepper offer here is a box you can buy, a complete receiver.
Yes.
You plug in a GPS antenna, your antenna, and a power supply and Ethernet. You do it. But and I'm wondering that in the context of this project with for the National Quiet Zone project with Jesse, yeah, that we're going to need to create a box. I think that contains all of the componentry and is well shielded and well tested. And I'm wondering if that might be the basis for such a here is the HAMSci reference receiver, okay?
Yes.
That you could order from Tapper. It won't be, it'll be, and that would include, a B-Link or something like that, and the RX888 or something like that, and the appropriate high pass filter and LNA, all the things that you need at any site. I mean, never. You're always going to have to do some customization at a site, but that would seem to me to be because I see a lot of people struggling to get even their Grape 1s and Grape 2s on the air and to keep them on the air.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that. I think in the short term, if we can just, and again, Gary will work with you. So Gary basically did this for the Grape 1. You can work with him and he can write up a procedure and get it on the website that says, okay, here's where you go buy this stuff. And it would just get documented, because like you saw on the listserv the other day, Steve Kepler down at Clemson, he's like, how do I actually set this up? And I was like, Steve, you should talk to Rob and Michael Howard.
That's right.
Like, there's this like secret there's a secret, you know, you have to know who to ask and always be
you know, absolutely. I'd love to get myself out of it. I spend more time than I hate, you know, the frustrating amount of
So-
time supporting customers and installations these days.
Yeah, I think so. If you talk to Gary, Gary will help you to do the writing and put that up. And then, I mean, if he's not running one of these stations himself yet, you know, I think I have some money, you know, and I even have some B-links sitting at my house that we can ship him parts for a station so he could get one put up at his house and use that. He can use that as kind of the
It would walk him through it. Well, you know, the person who's the best person, almost better than me, might be Michael Howen, because Michael is very familiar with setting up new stations, and
so maybe Michael and Gary.
yeah, and if we could get Michael and Gary together, I'd be happy to participate. But I think that that would be, I think, a wonderful. I would very much. I'd love to be able to refer people to. Here's a web page you go to, and this tells you how to set up a Whisper Demon Grape site, and you'll be able to do, you know, all these things with it.
And that's exactly, like, people come to hamsci.org and they're looking for that web page. So they want that. So
Good,
I think Gary has full access to the hamsci.org webpage, and he knows how to write up articles and things like that.
Okay, well, that's I will initiate that. I'll send an email to, I'll talk to Michael maybe today and before I start surprising him with a new project for him to work on. I think he has some time right now. It's
but I think in the long run it may take a little bit of work right now, but it's going to save us all a lot of work later.
Absolutely. It's always a hard thing. I'm you know, to trade off between, do you just help the person who's, you know, is got the problem right now, or do you? I've tried to create a wiki. There's a wiki on the Whisper Demon GitHub page, but I don't have time to maintain it, and I don't have. We have a few entries, but it hasn't really been populated much, and that's a pretty well hidden resource in any case. So having it up on you know, a page on the HamSci site that says, here's how you can do a Whisper Demon Grape receive site, and here's the components, and here's the process. It's never going to be, you know, simple for people. People have to have a modest amount of understanding how to a terminal window and execute those terminal, you know, command line commands. So it's not entirely trivial.
But
you know,
that's okay.
That's another.
There's a lot of people out there with sharp Linux and Unix skills. So you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
I think that sounds great, Rob.
Okay, good. That's
Thank you.
I've got some. I think I have some action items out of this. At least one for the email to Gary.
That sounds great. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Okay.
Bill.
Take care.
7-3.